Hey gang, today I'm going to do a review for you on this very upmarket knife. This is the WE Knives 602. And this is pretty posh, to be honest. It's probably one of the most sort of high-end knives I've had on the channel so far. Only because it's been loaned by a very nice viewer, Mr. Kind, who let me edge test it and everything. So I've had a fair bit of hands-on time with it since, and yeah, I've got some pretty decent feedback on it. It's a really nice knife. I'll just go over the basics of it first. We'll start off with some size comparisons. Let's move this out of the way and get some more well-known knives in. So this is next to the Alma Ultralight Falcon, which is a very much pure EDC knife, and about the most opposite knife I've probably got to this at the minute, apart from like a butter knife or a Swiss Army knife or something like that. You see very different styling and pretty much everything. This is quite a beefy knife, and this is about as ultralight as a knife can get, really. Minimalistic and everything. And this is really, quite sort of almost over-designed or over-engineered, and this is, you would say, under-engineered. And this is a fairly pricey knife as well, $150. This is probably about 450 Australian dollars to get one of these in hand from a Aussie retailer. Maybe you could get it for a little bit less by ordering from overseas and waiting a while, but yeah. So that's next to the Alma. Let's show next to a Spyderco Delica. We all know how big a Delica is. There we are. So it's, it's got only a couple of inches or so on the Delica. It's definitely within like the 3.75 inch blade, rather than the 3-inch Delica blade. Actually, it might even be a 4-inch blade on this WE knife. So yeah, and again, just from the top, take it from the top. Bit sort of bigger, overall chubbier, chunkier, overbuilt. And let's look at it next to Kaiser Gemini. I just usually choose my comparison knives at random. If you've got any that you'd like to see as like staple comparisons, then let me know. So Kaiser Gemini has a 3-inch blade, I think, 3 and a bit inch blade, and just a little less handle there as well. Frame lock titanium knife, and lastly, the Line Steel SR11, which is about the same size, maybe just a teeny tiny bit shorter. So after carrying and using this knife, I think I've decided that the main philosophy behind it, like the main intent of it, is for like a high-end collector knife. This one is pretty usable. A lot of really high-end collector knives feel too nice to use, at least for me. They've taken some steps here to enable less of a sort of a fear of tarnishing it. So you probably are going to be actually happy to stick this into proper service and cut some cardboard, cut some rope with it, that sort of thing. But that being said, it is very much sort of designed and built as almost an exercise in engineering prowess as well. So as a result, it's going to have some things in it. Geez, my phone has stopped going off. It's going to have some elements of it that aren't practical at all and are just more of a because we can afford to, put this level of machining in, we've made this choice. So as a result, you're going to have a few little hindrances for your pure practical use as well. So I'll go into them as I just cycle through the general review. But these are definitely knives for knife people. They're made with the best materials, the best fit and finish, the actions that we all like. It's thoughtful design, and it's also slightly artful design, which is, if you missed my last video, I sort of spoke about that at the end of my sort of continuum of knife quality. That once you do get over that sort of $350 period, sort of price point, you really are sort of getting towards the materials more or less staying the same, but then you design elements and designer names and points of difference being the things that you're paying rather large excesses of money for. So this is starting to be, this is kind of entry level in those sorts of knives. It's certainly not it's not even a mid-tech yet, still just full production knife, but it's getting towards like Olamic cutlery. You'll pay another, $120 for an Olamic knife over this again sort of thing. So it's, but then you get some even more modifications and everything. WE has a huge lineup of, say, in 2016, all the knives beginning with 6. So this is the 620, so they had 20 different models, and then this had 6 different models of this. This is a 620J, and just different blade finishes and handle finishes, that sort of stuff. A lot of variation, but yeah, definitely sitting comfortably at the high end of production, that's for sure. So whether you'll ever spend this much money on a knife, you probably already know if you will or not. I'm still not sure if I did. The 2 times I have spent about this much on a knife was with my Sleesh Bowie and with my Sebenza. And I was not comfortable to use either. This one, on the other hand, may be different. I'm not sure. So anyway, I'll get into the full review, the good, the the meh stuff, and the stuff that I didn't really like about the knife. So the good is obviously the impeccable level of fit and finish, mechanical finesse, and just general attention to detail on the knife. It's something else. It's something that was noticeable to me as someone who handles a lot of knives, even handles really nice knives from lion steel and stuff. This was immediately noticeable to me as, oh, this is another level up in terms of just everything, in terms of fit, finish, performance. Performance as a collector knife, perhaps more than performance as an actual using knife, but definitely feels it's a tangible difference. And I wasn't ever sure that there would be. I thought, oh, surely knives all stop after I used to think all knives must surely stop after like the paramilitary too. Then I had some really nice Kaisers, and I had some the Sebenza and that sort of thing. And you think, oh yeah, it does get a bit higher. And then I've had this, and it gets even higher still. So you really can't understate how nicely put together this knife is, and just the extra little things that they didn't have to do that they've done just in the name of trying to, I guess, establish their name as a as the knife company that can do the crazy stuff on a production scale. So very, very impressive. And just as a general in-house design as well, it's a pretty impressive design, I must say. It's got elements that call from things that are well loved in the knife industry. So it's got a blade that's not too dissimilar to the Benchmade 940 perhaps, but then it's got a nice fairly neutral handle of titanium frame locking. It's got a pocket clip that's exclusive to this model. It's got some things that they know that knife people are going to like. It's got all the good stuff. It really does. This might be a bit busy for some folks, but I think overall, just as an exercise in, check out what we can do, it is very, very impressive. And that is probably the main reason for, I guess, pursuing knives at this level. At any rate, the next good thing about it is the materials are excellent, which is another reason why not only they're making really flashy looking knives, people make art knives and people make them out of 440C, and but this is like almost an art knife made out of M390 as the steel. Good M390, as I've shown in my cut test before, M390 that cut over 300 times through rope with a basic work sharp edge, and then it's got a titanium handle. It's got ceramic ball bearings at the pivot, resulting in flawless action. It is just, it's about the epitome of good materials in knife making today, for sure. So great materials there as well. Another thing is it actually does carry fairly well. Like, it's a bigger, bulkier knife. I'll put all the specs at the end, but it is not huge. It's fairly slim this way. So say if I get my Kaiser Gemini here out, because it's not a flipper, it doesn't really have anything sticking out any further, so it's actually about the same width as a pretty small EDC knife. This way it's a little bit wider for sure. It's a little bit sort of more, I guess, deep into your pocket, as in sideways deep. But in terms of just keeping things next to it in the pocket, it still actually carries fairly well. It's not the heaviest knife in the world either, in my opinion. For a big beefy blade like this, it is certainly, manageable for sure. I haven't had any real problems thinking, oh geez, this knife is huge, this knife is too heavy. It feels about the same as carrying, say, my lion steel. My lion steel actually, you would argue, probably feels a little bit more cumbersome in the pocket because it is just that little bit wider. I have to get that rust spot up there, it's driving me crazy. But it does actually carry really, really well as well. The pocket clip is fine. It's actually fairly deep carry. It swings against the pocket seam, and the knife isn't going to swing all the way back like a banana like that, but it's going to sit up about here. I'll show you some in-pocket footage. Absolutely fine in terms of how the pocket clip works. Whether or not you like this look of it, I'm probably leaving that one up to you, because the whole knife has a certain look that you're probably either going to like or really dislike, but there you go. So it actually carries pretty well as well. In terms of performance, it's a thicker blade, but for a thicker blade, which is just par for the course even still in 2018, it seems to be still par for the course with blades like this. The stock is always going to be 4mm or so, like this one is. It actually does slice fairly well. They've heightened the saber grind pretty well to this fuller here, and yeah, it slices fine through the rope. So say some knives that are this thick, when they're not ground correctly behind the blade, they feel a bit horrible going through my rope cutting test. This one was uncomfortable in my rope cutting test for another reason I'll get to later, but in terms of the blade's performance, it actually is totally fine with your cutting up fruit, vegetables, all that sort of stuff that requires a little bit more of a slicey edge. It'll do all that without a worry. So it's good enough. It's nowhere near, like, it's not going to slice like a delicate, like a thin little blade like this, or like the Alma Falcon or anything like that. It's obviously much thicker, but for something that's, you know, quite big and burly, it's not a clumsy performer by any sense. I also just love this blade shape. I think it's a really good looking blade shape, non-aggressive looking. It's just really quite a nice little sheep's foot style, tan-toe-ish kind of blade. It's really well done. So yeah, another great thing about this knife is, well, for me, I actually really like the general design of it and the colors and just the whole template really they've gone with on the 620J. There's some other 620s that I don't like the look of as much, but this one I feel did really, really well. I like the satin finish on the blade. They've done a polish on this flat here, and then they've done a cloudy stonewash down on the blade there. That's good for two reasons. Firstly, aesthetics. Secondly, stonewash masks wear really, really well. So I've workshopped this knife and really no marks along here. Often the plastic leaves a bit of a mark, which you can sort of wipe off with, you know, the rough side of a sponge eventually. But yeah, it's wears its use really, really well. And the handle is also the same. They've anodized the titanium in such a way that it is a little bit like on the patchy side, but not in a bad way, like in a pocket worn sort of way. Really, really well done there. So I really like how they've made the knife a really high-end knife, obviously, but one that looks usable and looks already used when you first get it from your pocket. So it's not perfect. Like the Sleesh Bowie was almost perfect, which is nice, but it's also a bit intimidating. The Sebenzas are a bit the same. They come and they're just really nicely done and, you know, immaculately finished, and it's a bit like, you know, at least with things like stonewashing and stressing the titanium, you can actually have a knife that you're not scared to use, which is great. And yeah, obviously, just as a side note, and it really shouldn't even be a good point for an knife like this, it should just be an assumed point, but mechanically this thing is completely sound. The lockup is 100% tight. Everything that the knife is supposed to do, all that amateurish problems are long in the rearview mirror by this point. So really, really well done fit and finish. Let's talk about the things that, you know, you need to know but might not, you know, be good or bad for you. Let's have a look-see. So if you are a disassembler, yes, this has the star driver screws. I'm not particularly a disassembler. What I will do sometimes is adjust the pivot, but I think with ceramic bearings, this is probably done with such good tolerances, you probably can just tighten it down all the way and it's still gonna fall open and closed. So I'm not too worried, but I do completely empathize with the people who do take knives apart. These can be frustrating and they are kind of rounded and they're not, you know, they're definitely not as good as just a straight out Torx or anything like that. And I don't even think Torx looks bad. These are really just Torx, but inside out, aren't they? You know, it's yeah, just one of those things that I can see why there's the fuss, but to me, it's not such a fuss. But I certainly will point it out. No worries at all. Another thing is the back spaces are really ornate and really nice and just part of that whole general look, but they don't give much affordances to cleaning the knife out. Like if gunk starts to accumulate under here and under here, you're probably just gonna have to blast it out with a pretty high pressure hose or high pressure squirt from the tap, rather than with a pillar construction knife you can, you know, blast out, you know, thread a dusting cloth through or something like that. I mean, most knives aren't like this, like Delica is the same. Most knives aren't, but I do prefer when knives are, because yeah, it's just one less battlefront against grime and crap sticking in the knife. If you can just see straight through it and see, oh yeah, it's time to clean this, without a doubt. It's nice. Another thing is ergonomically, the knife may not be ideal for you. It's got a little bit of extra sort of sculpting that fits my hands really, really well, I must admit, but I can just see a smaller hand is going to maybe struggle to maybe have like maybe 1.5 fingers in this forward choil rather than just one. And yeah, it's always just a bit of a risk when you start to, swoosh too much on the knives. The forward finger choil is good and fits me well, but just whether it will fit you well or not, if you can, I'd suggest getting one of these in hand first, but otherwise get one of the more neutral handled Wee knives. This isn't by no means like a crazy, OSS trench knife or anything like that, but definitely I can feel, especially when I did my long-term cut testing, I tell you what, cut 300 times with rope with any knife and you know exactly if it's for everyone, if it's just for you or if it's not for you. And with this one, I did have an issue with it because I have to cut my rope like this, because it's a push cut, and cutting like this, my knuckles get in the way. So I have to cut with my fingers to the side instead of pushing like this. See? The squared off top here actually has given me a bit of blistering and bruising on my finger there from cutting for so long, which is a good indictment for the steel, but a bad indictment for maybe the versatility of the shape here. And it is just a bit of a ledge, purely for the sake of being good looking as well. So it's how much forgiveness you have for that sort of stuff in the name of, art knife versus practical knife. Something you're gonna have to make up your own mind about. I can tell you though, for me, with my large size hands in the hammer grip, it's totally fine. I could use it all day like this. It's just when I needed to swing it around and use it in a different grip, it wasn't as great. And I just think if it was for a reason, apart from just being ridiculously good looking, then yeah, maybe it's worth having a look if there might be a different Wii model for you. That's maybe the thing. Cool, so let's get on to the things that I didn't like about the knife. First of all, this has, I'm not a lanyard folk, so if I was to get this knife, I wouldn't use the lanyard, but then there is quite a jab there on the end. You see that? The lanyard hole actually protrudes above the scales, and so when it is in your pocket, it is actually just a little bit of even when the lanyard's down, just a little bit of a sharp point. And it just seems like it could have been so much easily redone as a different sort of lanyard loop or lanyard hole. That's all. It's not a huge deal, but it's definitely there, and it's something I have noticed through actual use and carry of the knife. So, for sure, it's not not the end of the world, but it's not not great either. So there's that. What else? The fuller here is kind of one of those fullers that is not really for anything apart from good looks, and so it does get stuff in it. That's and as does this second fuller around the thumb stud and this fuller here. There is actually a fair bit of space here for when you've been using the knife for a while. For you get that kind of like mung, that builds up in these little nooks. There's actually a fair few mung collectors on this knife. So like when I did my cut testing, and I have thoroughly cleaned the knife since, but my hand got sweaty, and I'd been landscaping stuff before that, and I had like the black on my hands from that, and I noticed it all kind of like gathered up in these nooks and crannies and stuff while I was using the knife. So just a bit of a gunk collector for sure, and it's complex. It's a complex design, but you're certainly going to bring that up as well. So yeah, those are the only two real bad things I can think about it. Obviously, costing like $350 to $400, that could be a complete deal breaker for you, but that is more just a fact about the knife. I'm sure you've seen Wii knives already. If you're going into this review not knowing how much they cost, I mean, well, now you do, but it is just this part of the market, and either you agree with this part of the market and you swim happily in it, or you're a bit freaked out by it, a bit like I am, or you're just like, no, that's ridiculous, man, I would never. Then, so be it. But there you go. So overall, my first experience with a Wii knife, this is excellent. Like you can definitely, it's tangible getting it out of its little case, over even like a Sebenza, I would argue, over a Lion Steel, over your real high-end knives. It is a tangible enough jump for you to be like, okay, this is something else. I think it is the attention to like artistic details as well. As impractical as some of them may be, you just can't help but admit that it's impressive, and I would just be amazed to see if it can get any better than this. Like if a custom knife, I want to know what else you can pick up that's more than this, that you also have that same like, oh wow, yeah, this is an extra level again. So very, very interesting. Really interested to see what we do this year. They've had a couple of weirdo knives so far, like with the really rough textures on the handles, and they've had that 707 Blitz or whatever it was, gone down to VG10 steel in their budget line. A few little misfires so far, but overall, they've got some amazing designs. Ever since I saw their 601 that came out, I've always been a bit like, okay, that's different. And they do really look different. And so if you're after something really different that's, you know, made of the best materials with the best of the best CNC, fit and finish, all that sort of stuff, don't be scared. The WE knives, they are really that good. All right, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.